Sup, my name is Mike Yakovlev. Last week, I made a video showing this. And then after I made that, a lot of people had questions on how I did it, all this kind of stuff. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how I did that and how to set up a scene similarly if you wanna do it yourself. Let's get into it. All right, so first things first is I definitely used a asset pack. So if we go in here, asset browser, environments, and I got this pack from Kitbash 3D. Just 3 buildings that are very blocky and geometric that are perfect for that kind of Akira aesthetic that we're going for. So what I did was, here you can see the camera view, and if I go into solid view, you can see that the camera is just set up like really far away from the scene, and then it's right here. And the focal length of it is 120, so it gets this really strong like kind of compressing of the perspective, and then that way when the camera moves there's a really strong parallax effect. So I have it set to 120, and basically I just arrange the buildings from furthest to closest, and the idea is that, you know, that way I have more control over the parallax effect. So here I have the camera animated from going from this direction, going from here, and just moving slightly on the y-axis like that, and then down. So down because we want this foreground building to eventually come into frame. And so I'm gonna see if I scrub along here, that's kind of how it comes in like that. And a lot of people asked in the previous video, like, are the buildings moving? And yes and no. So the building in the immediate foreground, this one, it's not moving at all. The building that's the secondary one here, that one is moving, just kind of moving out of the way a little bit to really sell that parallaxing effect. It's almost like dizzying in the way that the buildings, like vertigo, like really makes you feel like the buildings are super tall. You don't know how much more there is beneath, how much more there is above. And I really like that. That's the effect I got when I watched the movie and the scenes. So I kind of wanted to replicate that a little bit. Maybe this is how they did it. Maybe they didn't do it this way, but it works for me. And I think it creates a really cool effect. So this one is moving. This one in the background, this third building is moving slightly less, still moving a little bit out of the way. And as they move out of the way, you can kind of see more of the background buildings get revealed. So this one is not moving at all. So let's jump into the environment and the color and everything like that. How did I get that look? How do I get that vibe? So if we jump, this is Eevee, by the way. And in Eevee, I feel like you get a little bit more play with the like artistic look to it. It's not as realistic, but then the trade-off is you get to kind of customize the values a little bit more and play with it a little bit more. So the overall environment is just an emission. It's nothing really specific, just an emission, red. And that's just to give that ambient color, that reddish kind of ambient hue to everything. And then if we fly in here into the scene, you can see I have a volume, and that volume is just a volume scatter node plugged into the volume. And you know, anisotropy is tweaked a little. The higher it is, closer it is to 1, the more the lights glow themselves, and the further it is from 1, the -1, the more just like evenly distributed it is. I think that makes more of a difference when you're dealing with cycles versus Eevee, but you still get that bloom from the lights a little bit more from Eevee. And then what's cool is like the color you can always change, because that'll kind of give you a different wash over your whole entire scene, which can be really fun to play with. But ultimately I landed on this color, and that, you know, just gives me the look that I want. So now we're inside the volume. Here's the volume. Let's turn it off so we can see the lights. The lights are just big area lights, and they're really just mimicking like the lighting, the uplighting that's coming from the street lights and all the little neon signs and stuff on the floor. So I'm really just going off of what looks good, and it's a lot of just tweaking and moving things around, changing the color, changing the intensity, moving it, playing around with it. I recommend you play around with it and see what works for you. In the first time I did it, it was just random, you know, whatever lights, whatever looked good to me at the time. There was no like, it wasn't premeditated. But in the second round, same thing. You know, I kind of know what I'm going after, but I'm not necessarily like, all I know is that the lighting needs to come from beneath. and I want to play around with like the pink, the yellow, and the orange and the blue. Those color combos I think are very neon, and they kind of work in my favor here. So if I go into the render view in this window, from the camera view, you can see exactly what that looks like. Let me turn on the volume. There we go. The volume really sells that effect a little bit more. It's really bright, but you get the idea. So I have one area light in the back, putting on this building here in the back. And then I have another area light. It's a little bit smaller, pointed up at this main building. And then I have the second area light, and that really is just creating this hazy separation between the foreground building and the background building. So you can see that it's not really doing much besides creating a bit more glow, creating a bit more haze, bringing more attention to that haze. The fun part is with these lights, these area lights, is that I have this one, which is, if you can see, it's a negative value. So that really, like, it's like negative light, you know, it's shadow, it's a shadow maker. And I think that's a really cool effect. I've seen other people do it, and I saw somebody do it once, and I was like, no way it works like that. It does. And then it also works in cycles, so you can create like a really creepy corner if you want to have like a creature, or create like a horror effect. But here it works the same, you know, the same way that light kind of has this fall off and it's soft, works here. And really it was just a happy accident the way it turned out like that. And then same thing for this foreground building. This foreground building, on both sides, I have these negative lights pointing right at it so that it stays in shadow, so that everything's kind of getting the ambient light from the environment. There's lighting from the area lights, but I can really art direct the lighting and shadows a little bit more with these negative light values, because I can really say, despite all the area light and despite all the environment light, I want this to be really dark. And just that ability to do that is, you know, gives a lot more creative freedom to getting what you like. So in the Eevee settings, all I have is bloom turned on, and then everything turned up except for the clamp, and then the threshold is kind of like in the middle. I noticed that the threshold can be really fun, and it can really give a really interesting anime style bloom effect, because kind of bring it all the way down, you see it softens everything up. It just makes it look super bloomy, but in a sense that looks kind of good. You know, it kind of looks a little bit more ethereal, more, I don't know, this kind of just looks like an anime look to me in some ways, especially if you have like very strong lights and not like a cityscape. But if you bring all the way up, it really kind of crunches on the highlights. So somewhere in the middle, maybe like a 3. I think I had it like a 3 or a 2. It's like a good happy medium. I have the lights and the shadows, I guess, pointing at the building. I have all those parented to the building so that they move with the building. You can see here, like, as the buildings move, the lights kind of move as well. And that's just to keep the effect. And then lastly, these lights that are inside the windows. So this is just an image, and I'll show you the image here. This is an image, Hong Kong skyline. I got this image from a photo bash pack from photobash.org or .com or .co. I don't know, they changed their website. I'll have a link to everything, so you know you can go there and get it yourself. But they just released these photo bash packs. They're awesome. They're super high res. And this one is from Hong Kong. So all I did was I brought this in as an image as planes. I'll just show you real quick. Image as planes. Take the JPEG, make it emit, set it as an emission, and then bring it in, and then here it is like that. So changed everything here because, you know, it brought it in as kind of like it overrode the effect. But I brought it in like this, and then I used loop cuts to just cut out what I don't want, like that, and then position this, you know, in the place that I wanted. So, and then for that, for the color of it, yes. The color is going into alpha so that it's really knocking out like the black tones. And then the color itself is going into a color ramp where the lighter values are this, like, you know, orange kind of hue, and everything else is just not. So that gives us the effect of the interior lights of the buildings. That's how we get that look. You know, in terms of the composition and like the lighting, that really is up to you, and that's up to your own creative desires and how you want the look to be. I'm just trying to kind of, I'm being inspired by Akira and that sequence with the buildings where they're, they look like they're moving. And I really wanted to simulate that same effect. So that's what I have going on here. And the bloom is doing a lot of work. The buildings themselves, the amount of detail the buildings have really helps. Other than that, that's the setup that I have. And so I'm gonna render this out. Oh, one more thing. Before I render it out, so let me do a test render here. I also have a glare node plugged into the compositor so that you see these windows, these highlights get another kick of bloom. So it really makes them glow a little bit more. And I think that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna render this out and you're gonna see how it looks. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was like not too quick, but it also had all the information that you were looking for. If you have any questions, suggestions, you want to see other videos or anything like that, let me know in the comments below. But until then, have a good day. Peace.